Hello, my friends. How are you today? Welcome to Get Ready with Me and Talk About Stuff. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host. So this video or this show is just about me getting ready and talking to you about whatever is on my mind. And that can be anything from super serious stuff to just random things I felt like looking up and learning about. And that is kind of what today is. So you're going to have to bear with me today. I have been sick for a few days, and one of the symptoms I'm dealing with the most is brain fog. It's terrible. So I am probably going to have to consult my notes a lot today. I'm going to do my best not to do that, but you know, it's probably going to happen. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today is Lupercalia. Have you heard of this? I had not until fairly recently, and I heard about it in conjunction with something about Valentine's Day. And so I thought, well, what is this? And I looked it up, and oh my, it is like Valentine's Day's sketchy cousin, I guess. I should warn you that in the narrative I'm going to be telling you, there are things that if you're sensitive to, you know, descriptions of harming animals, there are also some allusions to sexual assault. This video might not be for you. I'm not going to dwell on those things for too long, but they do come into the picture. So, Lupercalia. Now, Lupercalia is a pagan holiday, and as you might imagine, it is not the only pagan holiday that has been adopted and sanitized by the church. We also have Christmas, Easter is another one. You know, these are, you know, there are several things that happen throughout the year that actually originated as pagan holidays, and Valentine's Day is no exception. Now, Lupercalia was a holiday celebrated in pre-Roman times back in, I believe it was the 5th century. That might have been when it was finally done away with. But anyway, it was a long time ago. So Lupercalia, you know, the origins of it are not exactly entirely clear. And as I tell the story, you'll get a better understanding of that. But it's such an old tradition. It's such an old bundle of legends that go into creating Lupercalia that, you know, by the time it reached its end, people really weren't sure why exactly they did some of the things that they did. But it has its roots in the story of two men who would eventually become the founders of Rome. And they are dun, 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 Romulus and Remus. Now these two, when they were babies, their uncle, who was a king, had ordered them killed as retaliation for their mother's broken vow of celibacy, which I don't understand at all, but okay. So, having heard that the king had ordered his nephews killed, one of the servants was like, we're not doing that, and made a basket for them and sent them down the river. This is a vaguely familiar story, is it not? If you grew up in the church at all, you'll recognize some of this as the story of, you know, elements of it were also part of the story of Moses. And at any rate, so this servant made a basket and put the babies in the basket, and the king had ordered them drowned in the river. So the servant did put them in the river, but they were in a basket, so rather than drowning, they were carried away with the current. And of course, in the legend, there are gods who were watching over them, making sure they were traveling safely, not unlike what happened with Moses in the mythical story in the Bible, And similar to Moses, this basket containing these baby boys got caught in a I believe in the Bible they say that the basket with Moses in it was caught in the reeds. In this case, the basket got caught in the branches of a fig tree and just stayed there. This was said to be orchestrated by the gods so that the boys could be found. And the boys were found. They were found by a farmer, or a shepherd rather, and his wife, and they were taken in and raised as their own sons. They were adopted. And so these boys grew up learning their father's trade and, oh wait, no, that's not true. Back it up. Okay, so before they were adopted, they were raised by a she-wolf. So a she-wolf found them in the branches and was like, I'm going to take these kids home and raise them as my own. And she did. She raised them in a cave and looked after them for a long time, and then they were adopted. Okay, so now we're all caught up. So these boys grew up and decided it was time to carry out vengeance for their uncle's attempt to murder them. So they started off by killing their uncle, because nobody is going to try to kill these boys and get away with it. They were like, okay, it's time to take care of this guy. So they did. They killed him. And then they went to the cave where the she-wolf had raised them. And they named the she-wolf was Lupercalia. Or no. No. I'm sorry. I'm really... Okay. Yeah. They named the cave Lupercalia. And Luper is derived from the word lupus, which means wolf. So they named this cave Lupercalia, and they started a festival called Lupercalia. And part of it was to honor the she-wolf who had raised them, and part of it was also to honor Lupercalia, who was he was a fertility god. Now this is where we're going to get into some graphic things. It's important to understand that Lupercalia is vastly different from Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is all sweetness and loveliness and just ooey gooey sugar sweet, you know, poetry, and just it's very gentle and loving and, you know, just meant to make you feel so good. Lupercalia was not that. Let's get that established right now. Lupercalia was violent. It was blood-soaked. It was just, you know, like a diametric opposite of Valentine's Day. So Lupercalia started with sacrifices in the cave in Lupercalia. So there were animal sacrifices that took place in various places during the celebration, but it began in the cave. And they would sacrifice. The priests, by the way, they were priests that were, you know, trained specifically for, sorry, I forgot to get something out. Specifically for carrying out these rituals during Lupercalia. That was kind of like their job, their calling, if you will. So the priests would start, and they were called the Luperci or Luperci. I'm not sure which one it is. And what they would start with is sacrificing 2 goats and a dog. And there is some speculation as to why these things were chosen, because again, this happened so long ago. There really isn't any clear line between why they chose those things. The speculation is that the god Faunus, also known as Pan, does have something to do with this story, and we'll get to that a bit later. But this god, it would make sense that, you know, these sacrifices would come into play if this god is part of it, because Pan or Faunus was supposed, I guess he was like the god of like the farmer, I guess, or the goat herder or something. And he also raised hounds. So there is some speculation that the reason for the 2 goats and the dog was to honor that god. But again, we don't know for sure because these things happened so long ago and there aren't really any clear records as to why things were done the way they were. So, you know, we're kind of just spitballing in things that seem to make sense are kind of what we're going with. So they would sacrifice the 2 goats and the dog. And then they would take 2 young priests. In some texts, they're called boys. And they would take the knife that they had just used for the sacrifices, and they would smear blood on the boys' heads. And then they would wash away the blood with milk. I don't know. I don't make these rules. I'm just telling you what I heard, okay? I didn't do this. I'm just the messenger. So then one of the weird parts is that then the next part of the ritual was that these boys, I believe before the blood was washed off, had to laugh. They had to fake laugh, real laugh, whatever, but they had to laugh as part of the ritual. So you got your sacrifices, you've got your blood, you've got your laughter, and then they would have a feast. And this feast would consist of basically the entrails of the goat. It wasn't anything like delicious. It wasn't like, you know, like you might find at Saturnalia. Oh, no. This was a much more, I don't want to say primitive because I hate that word because it implies like a lack of understanding and so forth. I don't think that there was any lack of understanding here whatsoever. I think this was very much a conscious choice. And they would eat these entrails, and probably the fact that they were eating the entrails also plays into why there are copious amounts of alcohol consumed during these Lupercalia festivals. Because these festivals lasted between February 13th and February 15th. So there were feasts, there was drunkenness, there was just all kinds of stuff going on. So then after that, part of the festival rituals was any eligible maiden who wanted to have a baby. I don't think that they had to be a virgin. I think they just had to be eligible and want a child. They could write their names on a clay tablet and have their names put in a jar. And then what would happen is the Luperci or Luperci, again, I don't know, would draw names of these women and would actually pair them up with someone who they would couple with throughout the festival. Now it's unclear as to how long these couples stayed together. Some texts that I've read said that it was just for the festival. Others said it was for the year until the next Lupercalia. And then still others said that, well, and I'm sure this is true, that some of these couples ended up falling in love and getting married and staying together, you know, forever and ever. But anyway, so they would be coupled with someone, and the job of the man was to get this woman pregnant, because Lupercalia is a lot of things, and one of them is a celebration of fertility. Now, in conjunction with this celebration of fertility with the coupling, another job that these Luperci have, and this actually happened after the Feast of the Entrails, I believe. So the priests would then take the bodies of these slaughtered goats, and they would cut strips of their flesh and make basically like whips out of them. Then these men would get naked. This is just wild. So they would get naked, and then they would go running through the streets and whipping people, mostly women. Now, it is brutal. It doesn't matter, I guess, when it's happening. To our modern sensibilities, this sounds incredibly brutal. And I'm sure that even back then, you know, people were like, I don't know about this. Nevertheless, it did happen. And it was considered a fertility, and, you know, part of the fertility ritual. And as horrifying as it sounds to us, back then, women would actually like bare their shoulders or their back and invite the lashing. Now, there's no clear indication of what exactly this lashing was supposed to do, like how it increased their fertility. I don't know. I kind of think it was like just a BDSM thing and they just had to give a reason for it. I mean, I can't imagine what reason they would have for thinking that doing this is going to make these women more fertile. But that was kind of the reason that was given, that if you get whipped with the whips made with the goat's skin by one of the priests, then what do you know? You're more likely to get pregnant. I don't know. I don't know. Again, I don't make these rules. I am just the messenger. So they would do the whipping in the streets and they would do the coupling, and it was really just a drunken, violent, blood-soaked festival that went on for a few hundred years at the same time as what would become Valentine's Day. Well, so this is going on. Over time, it did become more tame, but nevertheless, the Catholic Church was like, you know, we're not doing this. And there came to be a rise in legends about a man named Valentine. Now, some of you have probably heard some of the legends associated with the person who would become Saint Valentine. One of them is that, you know, Christianity had been outlawed in Rome, and a man named Valentino was marrying Christians, like in secret. He was joining them in marriage, and this was discovered, and he was taken to prison. While in prison, he tried to evangelize Claudius II, you know, putting it in the simplest terms possible. He tried to convert him, and this did not set well with Claudius, and he was like, execute this dude. And he was executed on February 14th. Now, it's also implied that you know, there's also the speculation, obviously, that there was more than one Valentino, if you can imagine that. There was more than one Valentino, and a lot of them, according to the legends, were executed on February 14th. Another legend associated with Valentine is that while he was in prison, he was tutoring the daughter of the jailer. And this daughter, this young girl, she was blind. And one day, after praying with Valentino, her sight returned to her, and she could see, or I don't know, maybe she had been blind from birth, but she could, you know, she prayed with Valentino, and her sight, and she could see. And she and Valentino would become friends over time. And nevertheless, Valentino was still going to be executed. There was nothing to derail that plan. So the night before his execution, he supposedly wrote a letter to this young girl. Her name was Julia, and he signed it from your Valentine. So there are a lot of legends associated with this man named Valentine. Nevertheless, despite the ambiguous origins of Valentine, Saint Valentine, you know, the Catholic Church named him a saint, and I guess they took like an amalgam of all the Valentinos and said, yes, this person is a saint, and he was, you know, the Catholic Church decided he was a saint. Well, after that happened, the Pope at the time, who was, hold on, let me check my notes, because I know I wrote this down. Pope Gelasius I. So Valentine, Saint Valentine, had a reputation for being the patron saint of lovers. And the Pope, Gelasius I, took advantage of the popularity of this saint, and he decided to use that popularity to declare that Lupercalia celebrations were not going to be happening anymore. Those were done. They were over. Outlawed. Instead, February 14th would be celebrated as, not even really celebrated, just as honored as a day to remember Saint Valentine and the power of his martyrdom and so forth. Basically, you know, similar to what happened when the church usurped the Saturnalia celebration and turned it into Christmas. Originally, it was not intended to be a celebration of any kind. It was intended to be a day of quiet reflection. And basically that is what they wanted to do with Lupercalia. The church was like, you know what, we're calling this ours, and yeah, that's what we're going to do. And this is not going to be a day of wild celebrations. No. It is going to be a day of reflection. You can imagine how well that went over. So over time, you know, obviously in today's modern society, Lupercalia celebrations as they are known would not be happening anyway. Not as they did back in the day. In fact, Lupercalia celebrations were so notoriously, like, just off the rails wild that even today some modern Christians believe that the connection between Lupercalia and Valentine's Day is so significant you should not even celebrate Valentine's Day because it is rooted in a pagan tradition. There is some validity to that, I guess. You know, Valentine's Day does borrow very heavily from Lupercalia. Even the colors that are associated with Valentine's Day, like white and red, those are colors that represent, you know, the white represents the milk that the priests were washed with after the blood, red, was smeared on their foreheads, and they laughed and then went out and started whipping people. And even that, you know, even that act of the whipping, that is rooted in the story involving Faunus or Pan, where he sees Hercules walking with Ovid, who is very beautiful, and he looks at Ovid and he's like, I want some of that. And that night he goes to the home of Hercules and Ovid, and he walks, you know, he just helps himself to the house, walks in on them sleeping, and he begins to essentially sexually assault the person that he believes is Ovid. What he does not realize is that Ovid had actually laid her clothes over Hercules. So as Faunus is trying to assault Ovid, he feels something that doesn't feel quite right, and he thinks it's a snake. A snake indeed. Hercules leaps up and I'm sure gives Faunus the thrashing of a lifetime. So anyway, it's believed that at least part of the reason for the nakedness of the priests on that day is so that they can't hide their gender. Now, for multiple reasons, this would not be cool today in any way, shape, or form. So there, I mean, not that nakedness and so forth is typically a big part of how we generally celebrate Valentine's Day. Like, you don't send your kids to school with Valentines of naked people. But, you know, romance and sex and so forth are seen as a big part of Valentine's Day. And there is no denying that there is a direct link with the traditions of Lupercalia. So, I mean, in that regard, you could easily say that, yes, these very sensitive Christians who suddenly become quite concerned about the morality of other people do have a point. What's interesting to me, okay, so part of what I do, one of my hobbies is creating redacted poetry using the Bible. And I do plan to make a video on that to show you exactly what I mean and how I do it. But because I'm using the Bible, my source material right now is the Old Testament. And I can tell you that the Bible itself is full of all kinds of debauchery and you know, rampant sex, and you know, it's just wild to me that, you know, any Christian would claim that a certain holiday shouldn't be celebrated because of its connections to basically a big sex party, when the Bible is like anything but free of that stuff. But I digress. So how do people celebrate Lupercalia today? Because they definitely do. Lupercalia is still part of several people's February 14th rituals. Obviously, they're not, or at least I would think not, they're not sacrificing goats or puppies. And I have read it was puppies, not necessarily mature dogs, but I don't know. I've seen different stories, so I don't know. So they're not doing that. So what are they doing? Well, the Satanic Temple, which I love their work. They have put out a they put together different rituals or different ways that people can celebrate Lupercalia if they choose to. And one of them is, you know, they really focus on making it about loving yourself, writing affirmations about yourself on paper, reading it as you take a milk bath is one of the things that I saw that someone plans to do. So the emphasis has shifted from, at least for the Satanic Temple, it has shifted from a fertility ritual to focusing on loving yourself and this is important, taking the fertility ritual part of it and kind of flipping it around to celebrating your bodily autonomy to make your own reproductive choices. And you might think, well, you know, why are they politicizing it? Blah, blah, blah. I think it's fantastic because the whole thing with Lupercalia, other than obviously permission to have sex with people that you may or may not be with after the festival, not that you need permission for that, but like ritualizing it kind of made it like, yes, you absolutely should do this, and, you know, there's nothing, you know, taboo about it whatsoever. The whole point was to impregnate these women. Now, granted, you know, according to what I've read anyway, the women chose this, they wanted this, but shifting the focus from, you know, helping women have more babies to giving women the freedom to make their own choices is something that I think is awesome. And I think that choosing to celebrate that way and choosing to put the focus there is a timely move. I mean, that's the era we're living in. We are not any longer living in a time where, you know, a woman's job is to remain, you know, to do what she can to have as many babies as possible. I realize some people still live that way, but those of us who are happily embracing 2021 and all of the freedom that comes with it have moved beyond that. And I encourage everyone to do so, because women are not incubators. Women are more than their uterus. Women are more than their ability to have babies. Some women don't even have a uterus. So there's that. So that is the focus that, you know, people are putting on it in 2021. What will it be next year? I don't know. But I thought it was interesting to see the way, again, because when the church takes over a pagan holiday, they, you know, they try so hard to sanitize it, which is funny to me. They did the same thing with Saturnalia. They did the same thing with Easter. They try so hard to make it into something that it just isn't. And it's almost as if they expect people to forget the origins of these holidays. And so it's interesting to me always, regardless of the holiday, to look back at the origins and see where all these things came from, because they didn't just appear out of nowhere. They really didn't grow organically as far as the Christian version of the holiday. They are very much about taking something that already existed and trying to inject religion into it. I'm going to pause and finish this up and then come back with some final thoughts, so hang on. Okay, I'm back. I kept it pretty simple today. So anyway, that was the story of Lupercalia as I understand it. I'm sure other people tell it much better than I do, but there's the gist of it. So what I want to know is, do you celebrate Lupercalia? And if you do, how do you celebrate it? Or do you prefer Valentine's Day? Or do you actually find a way to celebrate both? I'm interested to know. I personally think that Valentine's Day is a vastly overrated holiday. I think if Valentine's Day is the only time your partner tells you how much they love you and how much you mean to them, I think that kind of sucks, to be honest. You know, I don't want to hear it just on Valentine's Day. I mean, come on. Anyway, I want to know how you celebrate. Also, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe. A lot of my viewers are not subscribers, but if you're watching these videos and you're enjoying them, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button so you'll know every time I post a new video. You can share these videos, please like these videos, and also if you would like to support future content, I have left some links in the description that will give you, ways you can contribute and make that happen. Anyway, thanks so much for being here today, for putting up with my foggy brain and my clumsy storytelling. I apologize, but I did want to get a video out this week because I have missed you and I wanted to play with makeup, and I thought, you know what I could do is play with makeup and talk to you at the same time. Anyway, have a great rest of your day. Be careful out there. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. Please wear your mask. Please practice good social distancing. We are a long way off from any kind of end to all of this, so we have to keep being careful. The only way we're going to get through this is together. So let's take care of ourselves and take care of each other. Don't should on yourselves or should on anyone else. And you have a great day, and I will talk with you again really soon. Bye.